Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Thursday, the 12th of June. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Chris Jack. How goes it, Chris?
All fine, all fine. How's yourself?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Just in this minute with the dog. He needed the toilet early doors, and it's roasting already outside. Don't know what it's like up in Killook. I know it was very sunny yesterday. Is another scorcher?
It's not quite as bright and quite as sunny this morning, but it's shaping up to be warm. I think the forecast next couple of days is nice. So and that's always a welcome change. We did a couple of shows last week in the rain. We're battering off the office window behind the laptop here. So much more like it this week, hopefully.
Yeah, we are well and truly in summertime now, aren't we? Right, before we talk all things Rangers, a quick word for our podcast sponsors, the great guys at Willows Fencing, the Glasgow-based fencing company and proud partners of the Rangers Review. They've got over 20 years' experience and unparalleled quality. Their qualified team is dedicated to keeping customers happy and providing exceptional work. They aim to deliver nothing but perfection in every job, and they offer free consultations. And as well as that, you get a 10% discount with the code Rangers Review if you head on over to their website, willows-fencing.com. Right, let's crack on. News that, we discussed Hamza Igamane yesterday when I was on with Joshua and the Rangers striking department in general, and whether the Moroccan could be Russell Martin's main man to lead the line next season. Now, reports emerged from France yesterday evening. I think the publication Foot Mercato reporting that Hamza is someone that is attracting interest from several clubs, namely in France and also in the English Premier League. Teams down south said to be keen. Everton, who were credited with an interest a wee while ago, West Ham and Brentford also, and a number of teams in France said to be keen on him, namely Lens, Lille, Rennes and Strasbourg. So he's a man in demand, Chris. No surprise, really, given the season that he's had at Rangers. Scored some tasty goals. Seen some fees being bandied around and what Rangers would likely accept for Hamza. If there's a number of clubs interested in him, a bidding war may ensue.
That sounds like a good old-fashioned bidding war. You can't beat a bidding war this early in the transfer window. Now that's certainly it's a long list of clubs going by that report. A long list of interested clubs, and it's no surprise. I think Rangers fans know enough about Igamane to know his potential. I think in the wider game, and some of the fans of those particular clubs, they might not know as much about him. I think if they do, as the Rangers fans do, and they get on YouTube and they go through the compilations, they will certainly be impressed. Not just for the goals, but the way that he controls the ball, also the flicks and the tricks and the nutmegs always stand out on these compilations as well. But there's a lot to like about Igamane. There's a lot of potential that can still be untapped. I know people will say he's only been here one season. He can be the starting striker under Russell Martin. But if you're going to make that profit on someone that you only signed 12 months ago, that's a very different. It's a very difficult situation to weigh up. Now, of course, you don't want to lose all of your best players. It's not as if there's a whole number of really, really good players in this squad. We know the guys that should be allowed to move on and will be allowed to move on. Ideally, the likes of Raskin, Diomande, and Igamane, they're three that you would keep, you would develop, you would have as key members of your squad. If there's big money being put on the table, that can go a long way to helping Russell Martin and also the recruitment team, Kevin Thelwell and Dan Purdy. That can go a long way. So if that type of money is being put on the table, and if Rangers can get a healthy sell-on fee inserted in that deal as well, it may just be too good to turn down, and you just have to you take it and you move on it and you go and try and reinvest it.
This publication states that Rangers demanding €15 million for him. got to say, I would be wanting more. There's a question that comes in from, where is it? Yeah, Raymond says, does Asfar have a clause for a percentage if Rangers do sell him? Do we know if, I'd imagine most clubs and deals have sell-on clauses in transfers these days, so I'd imagine they'd have looked to have put one in there for Hamza because he has great potential. That, for me, 15 million euros is a bit on the low side, I would say. Maybe I'm being a bit optimistic there, Chris, but 12.7 million pounds is there thereabouts with the exchange rate. I'd be wanting a bit more for Hamza, I've got to admit, especially if there's so many clubs in for him. I'd be starting at 15 million pounds sterling and looking up the way.
When you were going through that sentence there, and you said 15 million, I thought that's not a bad fee. And then you said euros rather than pounds, and I suddenly went cold on the idea.
Yeah,
I think that it has to be in that ballpark of 15 million pounds, as you say. Rangers, they're under no financial pressure to sell it. It's not as if they have to sell him to go and do their work on the squad. We know what the budget is. There's other sellable assets within the squad, and we spoke about one a couple of days ago when I was on in terms of Nico Raskin. So Rangers, they're not backed into a corner in terms of someone like Igamane. And if they do sell, it has to be on their terms. It has to be a fee that suits them, so with that sell on as well. Because given everything that we've seen of him, this is not going to be the first big money move, or not going to be the last. Sorry, this won't be the last big money move that he makes. He's got so much potential. There's so much to like about him, and regardless of where he goes, you would back him to go and prove he's still very raw. Obviously, now, we spoke about that a number of times last season, but there's a lot of qualities there that can be enhanced in the right team with the right manager. You would back him to go, and within another 18 months, 2 seasons or so, to be on the move again. And that's where Rangers can capitalise on that deal as if they can get a sell-on in there. So a bit of work could potentially be done in this forward area. Now, we spoke the other day there about Cyril Dessers and him potentially moving on. Danilo, it's hard to tell what the summer is going to bring for him, but Igamane is the one that's going to bring in the biggest fee in terms of forwards. He's the one that's got the highest ceiling. He's the one that's got the most potential. And if that list of clubs who, we know that clubs have been watching him at the European games. We know that his reputation has really just gone up and up and up over the course of the season. If those list of clubs that are interested, it's one thing being interested, it's another thing putting money on the table. If Rangers can get a couple of those clubs putting a bit of money on the table, so that certainly bodes well for their bottom line. So under no pressure to sell, you just go and you take him to the market and you see what you can get for him.
Yes, lots of comments coming in, as you can imagine, on Hamza. Well, first of all, David says, first time catching a live, great pod. Thank you, David. That's very kind of you to say so. Point here from Overland, says Igamane needs to stay for a season up front. His value will skyrocket. Joe Montana says the boy is raw talent, need to negotiate a decent sell-on percentage as he'll go for big money later on in his career. I think he's very much destined for bigger things, really. I just hope that Rangers can keep hold of him for at least another season. I want to see more of Hamza Igamane leading the line for Rangers. When I was on with Joshua yesterday, Chris, I did say whether the jury for me is still out on whether he can net the sort of numbers Cyril Dessers scored last season. That's still a question mark for me. There's no doubting he's got talent and quality. It's whether he can be that guy that Russell Martin is hanging his hat on. Now, I think Rangers have been over-reliant on strikers in recent years, ever since the 55 season when the midfielders were chipping in with goals. I think Rangers were certainly over-reliant last season on Cyril Dessers. They need goals to come from different avenues. I don't think Dessers per se is Rangers' main problem at this moment in time. Far from it, but we need goals from other areas of the pitch, do you reckon?
We do, because it's something that this team, this squad have just not had. You look at Tierney and his numbers last season. how important were they? Now you can now look back at the campaign as a whole. If Czerny had only contributed half the number of goals and assists, where would that have left Rangers? It wasn't exactly a classic season already. So if you don't have someone like Czerny contributing, it would have been really, really tough going at times. You could usually rely on James Tavernier had a bit of a quieter campaign in that regard, up against his usual standards, but they don't have centre halves that score goals from corners. They don't have midfielders that chip in. They only really had one winger in the squad. McCausland ended up with a couple. Cortez, obviously, we've spoken a lot about him, and I'm sure we'll continue to speak a lot about him over the coming weeks. So they do need goals from other areas. It's something that Rangers haven't had. It's something that Celtic have had for a number of seasons, and it takes a wee bit of the pressure off your main centre forwards.
Yeah.
Good teams are complete teams. Rangers have not been a complete team. They've been a complete mess. There's not been a complete team for quite some time. So it's, I think, we've seen a lot spoken and a lot read and watched a lot of videos. And we've heard Russell Martin speak a bit about his style. That seems to be one of the areas that he will look for. He's not just going to be get the ball up to number 9 and make sure he sticks at the back of the net. It's a more well-rounded way of playing than that, and he will be looking for the more attack-minded players within his squad to chip in. Can Igamane do it? I think it's still too early to tell. He went through wee spells, obviously, scored in a couple of games. Had some, also there's certain goals that are certain nights that stand out. Parkhead being the main one. That night in the Europa League against Nice was also a magnificent night for him. But there was then that Spurs, obviously, at Ibrox, but there was that barren spell as well. I think you're always going to get that. I think actually feeds in a comment there from Stuart that came in talking about Hamza being raw. For me, it's not about the age as such. And I do get the comparison of there's younger guys elsewhere, but
started late, didn't he?
That's it. You have to look at where was Igamane when he was 15, 16, 17. He wasn't playing in the Barcelona first team, but because he didn't have that exposure. We had a big interview, had an insightful piece on the site a few months ago, looking at his kind of rise in his early years. Even as a teenager, he's still playing on the streets with jumpers for goalposts type of stuff. It was only like later teens when he's then into a proper setup. He then also goes into his AS4 and does really well, and the rest is history from that stage. But he's not been in an academy from the age of like 5 or 6 and being coached all the way through. And that's what I mean. I think that's what other people mean in terms of raw. It's not just age; it's an inexperience because he's just not operated at a high level for that length of time. Now that can be a bad thing. It can also be a good thing because it means that when you can put more coaching into him, look how good he is already. Look at the attributes that he's got already. If you can coach him and you can put him in a proper setup and he can play in a successful team, that then is the exciting part for him in terms of the scope that he's still got to improve.
He's one of these guys. Joshua touched on it yesterday. I mean, he gets bums off seats. He's almost plays like he's playing it in the street, which is a rarity in the modern game. Football these days is extremely boring for me personally, compared to 20, 30 years ago and beyond, when you had showboaters, you had guys that really were out there entertaining, and it wasn't as robotic as it is now. And Hamza, very much a throwback to those times. So, I would like to see him in a Rangers jersey next season. Let's get to some points coming in. Just on Tav and his goal tally, sort of light bulb moment for me when you were speaking about that. Roddy Fraser says he would never get penalties. Yes, so let's hope that's penalty to Rangers starts being a thing again next season, because that certainly died off last time out. Alan Govan says, can you see Igamane fitting Russell's style of play? We sort of touched on that yesterday. Jury's out for me because Russell does like his strikers being good at the press with good work rate, and whether Hamza fits into that remains to be seen. And an interesting point just on selling at the right time, I guess. And Stephen says, we're trying to cash in on El Buffalo when he had a bad season. All interest cooled he left for Hee Haw, which is a fair point. And big thank you to Stuart Grant, who has very kindly donated 5 Rangers Review memberships to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Stuart. That is very kind of you. Moving on to other potential departures, I guess, transfer news, if you like. Headkeeper says this, is there no interest in Bayrami? There was about, fortnight, 3 weeks ago, something like that I think Sassuolo were reportedly keen on bringing him back to Italy. And I'm not entirely sure what the fee would have been, but I don't think it would... what Rangers paid, I think they'll get there or thereabouts for him. It's not what we spoke about Bayrami at length on various videos, Chris, but I would be surprised if he's a Rangers player next season. I can see him moving on.
When you think of players that are going to fit into a Russell Martin side, we've obviously not seen a Russell Martin Rangers team yet, but I say we've seen them, we've heard enough about some of the core attributes that he looks for. I don't think Nadim Bayrami fits into that particular model. I would be really surprised if he's a player that Russell decides that he wants to be part of this squad. We're going to have an in-depth look at the squad in general on the site over the next couple of days, kind of going through player by player and what their position is, what their future is, what interest there is in them. And Bayrami, I think we can all but write off. I just don't see him being part of this squad. He's not done enough. He was signed to solve a problem in terms of a creative number 10 that could provide assists, that could cut teams open, that could be good against these low blocks, that could score goals. I think it's five goals and 5 assists. That's not really the kind of that's not the return that Rangers were looking for on a £3.5 million player. If you can get as much of that £3.5 million back as possible, you move on, you wish him well, and we forget that it ever happened. I would be quite happy with that.
Yeah. Some other points that were coming in. Where was I here? Just on Russell Martin. Mac raises the point. He says, I just recovered from your interview with Alfie. This was a Southampton journalist. Then you hit us with Carwin. You're not helping my blood pressure here. We've got, if you've not seen it, folks, we've got a Swansea City perspective on Russell Martin's time down in South Wales prior to joining Southampton. Boy Carwin was very good. He gave us a bit of an insight into how he got on there. Some of his lines that he was uttering had me a bit of concerned. Let's just say that. Pretty much he said that you need to put up with a bit of harem-scarum play to begin with, playing out from the back, players that won't be used to that style. Rangers expect to lose cheap goals, but about 6-7 months in, it becomes enjoyable as the players start to get used to his style of play and what he's looking to do. Seen on social media the reaction to that, and folks saying you don't get time at Rangers, and that's a worry for me, Chris, because the matches that Rangers have got coming up are huge in terms of the financial aspect to it, with the Champions League qualifiers. Say that when George on the show yesterday that I worry that the way he likes to play Russell Martin, that it's going to take a lot longer than 2-3 months to get players up to speed. There is a concern of mine that I think the Champions League qualifiers may come around a little too soon. Unless he's completely changed his outlook on how he wants to play football, then Rangers may have more of a chance in these matches. But I have to admit I'm slightly concerned by that. Listen, if it works and he gets Rangers playing some scintillating stuff, brilliant. But I'm not expecting it to sort of just happen overnight.
I don't think it will happen overnight at all. It's how quickly can that happen. That's going to be one of the main challenges for Russell. How quickly can he get his philosophy? Can he get his ideas not just into the players' minds, but being that comfortable with it that they can take it into matches early on in the season? It's one thing sitting in that suite up at Ibrox with a big TV in it and the projector. It's one thing saying this is how I want them to play and showing them. It's another thing it being that almost that second nature that they need it to be. Interesting. I listened to the podcast that did with Gary Lineker. I know a number of fans listened to that over the last couple of weeks after Russell's name became obviously a bit more solid in terms of him getting the job. And he was saying, I think at Southampton and Swansea, he went in and he showed the squad once some clips of his previous clubs. He said, "This is how I want it to look. This is how I want it to play. I'm not going to keep harping back to this is what I've done previously, and this is what we did in this game, and this is what we did in that game." He said, "I'll show you once. That's how I want it to look. That's what I want you to buy into. After that, it's about can you do it." So you'd imagine fairly early on, the player's back 10 days or so, 10, 11 days, fairly early on, once he's got his squad together, I would imagine he'll go through that process again and say, "This is how I want this to look. This is my core principles, if you like." And he's then got not a lot of time to actually get them into the squad. Me and Stevie will be recording the talking point later on. That'll be out over the weekend, and we're going to have a bit of a look at the Champions League qualifiers. The draw for that is next Wednesday, I think it is. That game will be here before you know it. The weeks and the days will tick off very, very quickly. So we're going to have a bit of a look at who Rangers could face and the pitfalls, if you like, of having these games so early in the season. Saw it last season with Kiev. Rangers weren't ready. They should still have won that game, obviously, but they weren't ready, and that then fed into not really being good to go at the start of the domestic season. You draw out Hearts, and the whole thing snowballs in a negative way. So there's a lot of work to be done and not a lot of time, and that's going to be one of the big early challenges for Russell Martin. Can he get Rangers ready for the day that they have to be ready for?
Yes, this is what he had to say. Yeah, Carvin asked him, the Rangers fans need to be patient, because he did say at Swansea it took time, certainly in the second season, and he felt if he had stayed around for a third season, he would get Swansea into the playoffs, but of course he left for Southampton. So it takes a lot of time, comes with a lot of cons. For the first 3 to 4 months, it's almost insufferable, especially older fans. I think they're going to be pulling their own teeth out watching some of the stuff you'll see. But when it gets to the point of 6, 7 months in, I think it becomes more enjoyable. Let's hope we're not pulling our own teeth out and he hits the ground running, that's for sure. Just a bit of admin. Dennis says, can the membership not be purchased on iOS? It has to be a desktop version of YouTube, Dennis. So there is a way of getting that on your iPhone, or getting the desktop YouTube version on your iPhone. If you look it up on Google, you should be able to get a sort of talk through on how to do that. So there you go. And he also has a point here, Chris, just digressing slightly. He says, does Kaluk still have a good chippy?
Yes, it does. And people will, no doubt I'll get people saying yes, and you look like you're in it quite a lot. So I will save you the gag before you even get there. But yes, Dennis, it does.
Yeah, so there you go. Moving on from that, then other news, of course, potential incomings. You will have seen the reports over the weekend, I think it was, in Israel, that Rangers were said to have bid €4 million, I think it was, for Dor Turgeman, the Maccabi Tel Aviv striker. Another report from Israel, you will have seen it yesterday, perhaps, if you're active on social media, saying that was rejected. They're demanding €6 million for him, which should be in this sort of £5 million ballpark figure. We've talked about this lad before, Chris. He seems to be someone that the fans are quite excited at the prospect of pulling on a blue jersey. If it's £5 million, again, it's dependent. We spoke about this yesterday as well. It could be dependent on players heading out the door. You don't want to stockpile strikers. That could be dependent on Cyril Dessers, who of course has interest over in Greece with AEK Athens. Maybe a situation where he departs and Turgeman comes in, and Rangers don't necessarily spend any more than what they're bringing in.
As you say, you can't go and stockpile number 9s. You can only have so many of them. Also, you want as many good ones as possible. But it does look like the Turgeman one would be relying on either Dessers or Danilo potentially moving out. They're going to be in the same kind of finances. I think if Rangers do decide to go down a different route in terms of number 9 and Dessers does move on, Turgeman seems to be one that the fans have taken to quite quickly. Not sure where that interest is at. Again, we're asking all the questions, not always getting all the answers on these particular deals, but we're banging the door to try our best. So that interesting to see how that one unfolds.
Yeah, now a lot of comments as well talking about Josh Mulligan. What's the latest with that? He was a player, of course, that Rangers credited with an interest a couple of months ago or something there or thereabouts. I think that we had it on the website. It was put on pause, of course, with the departure of Niels Coppin. So we will do a bit of digging on that one to see what the latest is with regards to Josh Mulligan. Of course, a versatile player at Dundee, can play fullback, he's played in midfield as well, but of an athletic boy. There is interest in him from clubs down south as well. So he's someone pretty much like Lyle Cameron, Chris, that if he goes to another club, that what would be exactly breaking the bank. He's out of contract, of course. Dundee, I think, hopeful of keeping hold of him next season, but certainly the chap I spoke to last week doesn't hold out much hope that they'd be able to do that, given the interest in this lad.
I think some deals, they're not the most exciting ones, they're not the most headline-grabbing ones, they're not the sexiest ones. Some deals just make quite good common sense, though. I think Connor Barron last summer made sense for Rangers. Lyle Cameron makes sense. Mulligan, if they could get that one over the line for a relatively low outlay, you're getting a player that still has, again, talking back to the Igamane situation, you've got someone who can improve, who can be coached, who can really come on tactically, physically, mentally, come into a big club like Rangers as well. So I think if they could get that one over the line, it would make sense. So I hadn't heard the chat about the medical, but no, I will get on the case and see if there's anything doing on that one.
Yeah, we absolutely will. Lots of rumours, of course, speculation doing the rounds at this moment in time, keeping Chris busy, that's for sure. But I think we'll wrap up there for now. I think we've covered all bases for today. Big thank you to Chris, as ever. As he touched on there, talking point with, when will be that over the weekend, Chris? Do you imagine you and Stevie?
Yes, I think it will go Saturday. I think it's penciled in for. But if I'm back on next Monday and it wasn't out until a Sunday, don't shout at me. But it will be out at some point over the weekend. So I'll get the call with Stevie later on and say just to get a wee look at the Champions League draws and potential.
Who's the potential opponents again? Is it for the life of there's 3 teams: Servette, Brann, and is a team from.
You'll need to tune in the show later on and find out. No, Panathinaikos, Brann, and Servette are the 3. So that's, I think, without giving too much away and urging people not to tune in later on, I think that's quite a tricky 3 potential opponents at this stage of it. So now, say myself and Stevie will get into that later on, and that'll be out over the weekend, and a couple of feature bits out on the site over the next few days as well, just to keep the Rangers content ticking over nicely.
Yeah, we'll keep you covered, folks. If there's any developments with regards to transfers, make sure you're subscribed. Say this every video to the YouTube channel, to the website. Still a quid for 6 months, which is ridiculous value. We've got so many new people signing up, so a very warm welcome to you all. And make sure you keep your eyes on your phones, your tablets, whatever mobile devices you have to keep up to date with all things Rangers. I'm sure you're still all furiously scrolling, looking for any bits of information, news, because we're all hungry for new signings, of course. But we'll call it a day there. Enjoy your Thursday, whatever you are up to. If you're in the sun, get the sun cream on. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll be back tomorrow morning, 9:30, as ever. We'll speak to you all then. Bye for now.